we're really lucky, that will be a smooth yes. I'm now broadcasting on everything I should be broadcasting on. But knowing the technologies, no, we're on LinkedIn. That's a good start. We are not on Periscope yet. And we're not on YouTube yet, because of course we're not. Oh, I tell a lie, we are on YouTube, we're just in the wrong place. Fine. So everyone watching, the awkward silence is because I'm still trying to set up one last channel, and no one else knows what to say at the moment because I've not said anything to anyone. So it will be sorted shortly.
We are waiting for the boss to speak.
There's no boss here. I'm the facilitator or moderator. The whole point is that you get to speak. I just ask the questions.
Sounds good.
Okay, that's that. Come on, too many screens. Right, while we're waiting for it to sort itself out, because of course, let's do the introduction. So for anyone watching, for the audience in our luxury studio, this is Security Coffeehouse, which is generally an excuse for me to get a few people together who I want to ask some questions, talk to, get some interesting answers from. You could argue it's some sort of panel show. It's mostly just I want the conversation, and broadcasting it gives me an excuse. So this is the third part of our Talking About BeerCon series. BeerCon2 was a Rise of the Rookies event, so it was all first-time speakers. What do you mean you're not in webinar view? Yes, you are. Go away. That's a personal choice, Nick. You've set it to be in speaker view. Sorry, just having a dispute with some people in the attendee audience here. Right. This is the third one. We've had different group of speakers on each time to talk about their experience speaking at BeerCon2, and we will crack on with this one. So let's start in my top left with Zach. Just a quick introduction about yourself.
Okay, my name is Zach Slater. I was one of the speakers at BeerCon2, as James said. I gave my talk on using LARP and tabletop roleplay to potentially work better within an InfoSec context.
And Juan?
So I'm Juan. I used to work in hospitality and had the whole GDPR headache back in the day. This is something that I think is important and perhaps overlooked, and I spoke right after Slack, showing some shortcomings in the tech industry with regards to compliance.
And Marius.
Hi, my name is Marius, and I, as everyone else here, did a presentation in BeerCon2, and I have presented Attack the Cloud, so basically using MITRE ATT&CK framework in the cloud and how informed defense can help organizations to defend their cloud and basically best practices, yeah, things like that.
And finally, do you prefer Viv or Vivian?
Either's fine. Let's go for
Okay.
Viv.
Viv.
So I'm Viv, and I'm a second-year PhD student at the University of Glasgow. So I was effectively just presenting my PhD work at the stage we're at right now, which is using IPv6 potentially for malicious mass host recruitment. So essentially, how would a botnet maybe use IPv6?
Brilliant. And I'm now going to kick off with the first actual question, now that everyone knows who you are. And we will go in a different order this time. So let's start with Juan. How did you end up being roped in to speak or submitting a talk, or how did you end up actually speaking at BeerCon?
So I was originally going to be giving a similar talk, but more oriented to customer privacy over the summer. Of course, that didn't happen. And then I saw on Twitter that beer farmers just said, hey, we have the CFP open, send us an email. We want to know this, this, and this. And I said, I'll send it in. It's obviously a slightly different audience, so moved it more to the technical side of things rather than just customer privacy. And a week later, got an email saying, hey, we've extended the deadline for the CFP. And a couple of days later, hey, we like your CFP. You're going to be talking at BeerCon.
Thank you. And
So that
Zach?
was it for me.
Well, it was James actually who suggested that I speak at BeerCon2. So he kind of suggested I go for it. I was a bit hesitant at first, especially given the fact it was InfoSec, which is not normally my area of expertise, but he said that, potentially I could take some of the stuff I've done already around LARP and just kind of frame it in that context. So I kind of put some slides together and submitted it, and then got to give the talk. It was good.
And Viv?
So I think it was Scott posting about, like, have you submitted your talk for BeerCon2 yet? And I thought, right, okay. I've presented my work to sort of networking researchers before, and they seem to like it. So why not see if people actually, work in InfoSec like this? And I thought this would be the perfect opportunity. Like, if I've missed something really obvious that someone says, oh, you can just use this command to scan for IPv6 stuff, that would be ideal. That would hurry the research along a lot. So essentially, I just wanted to check, okay, this looks good, like, on paper in academia. Does it actually work for people in industry?
It's a good thing to do. And before I go to Marius, I want to point out the speakers for each of these sessions were randomly assigned. So this was not plotted to big myself up. But Marius, how did you end up here?
Similar to like Zach. I just go one evening, a message pinged up on LinkedIn that I've been tagged into something. And then obviously there was a message basically saying, from James saying, oh, you should speak there. And I was like, yeah, I would love to, but I didn't have, at first I was shitting my pants and I didn't know what to talk about. So we kind of had a conversation with James, and we spoke about, basically think about your passions and what are you working on at the moment. And I was kind of, I was deep into doing various courses with Attack IQ on Might Attack and, purple teaming and emulating attacks and things like that. And at the same time, I was doing AWS and Azure courses. So we decided to put 2 and 2 together, and just kind of went that way. I presented, I think it was kind of a long time because I put my in presentation of my kind of title.
You're spoiling my next question.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so basically, James kind of pushed me in and said, you need to go out of your comfort zone. And that's how I ended up there.
Yep. So the next question was going to be, how did you choose your topic? But I think 3 of you have largely answered that already. So Viv, obviously it was your research. Marius, it's because they were the areas you were passionate about. Zach, you gave sort of a hint. Do you want to just fill that out a bit?
Yeah, I've previously written on using LARP for professional development as a separate article, but more in kind of a personal capacity. So I guess it was kind of a natural jump really from that personal use to a more professional, like wider organizational setting. So that's where I kind of got the idea from.
And Juan, how did you end up with your topic?
So as I mentioned, I was originally going to be giving something similar, but focusing more on the customer privacy. Of course, with BeerCon having a much different audience, or perhaps more diverse audience, it made sense to go with something else, focusing more on technical aspects, which is how I went with the shortcomings and perhaps making it more accessible for us technical people who are not lawyers.
Thank you. Right, and then the meaty question, and we'll go in a different order again. Starting with Viv, how was the experience running up to the actual event?
How far in advance? Because, like, I thought I didn't really have any issues picking a topic. I thought, okay, that's kind of just set out, but it hadn't really sank in. Like, you're supposed to be giving a talk until like the day before, and then I was writing the slides and going, oh shit. you know, people were posting like, oh, there's 300 tickets being bought or whatever. And I was like, right, that's actually quite a big number. Yeah, I mean, I didn't find it too bad. So I started like a completely fresh slide deck, which was good, and thought, okay, how do I explain this like from the ground up? So that was nice. Yeah, I didn't find it too bad. Quite enjoyed it.
Marius?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was hard at first to kind of structure your speech and what you want to talk about. I think I was kind of sitting down. First, I kind of totally forgot about that because I think the topic was accepted like 3-4 weeks about it. And then on the week of actually speaking, I was like, oh shit, I need to make the slides. So I kind of structured what I want to do, how I want to talk. I think just starting with Mitre Attack and then obviously applying it to the cloud and then obviously best practices. And then I think the key thing is to kind of map out your talk because it was half an hour. So I kind of ran through the topic in my head and talked about all the slides, what I had in mind. And I timed it and it was about 48 minutes. And I was like, oh no, that's not gonna cut it. I need to kind of either speed it up or cut something out. But I went into the kind of a presentation of the mind if I need to, I'm just gonna cut like the last slide or speed up and looking at the time, see how I need to whether speed up or slow down. But other than that, it was great. The only problem for me was because those 2 days, I mean, the day before and on the day, I was working night shifts. So I literally had a like work night shift, came home, slept for like 2-3 hours, got everything ready, did my presentation, and then went back to work.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was a couple of days before you dropped me a message saying, could you take a quick look before I go to sleep because I'm on night shift tonight. So
Yeah.
yeah. One.
So when I received the confirmation that I was selected, I went back through the emails and it said, you have to save your preferred 15 or 20 minutes for the talk. And so in the confirmation, there was no mention of time. So I started working through some slides. I had the luxury of having the time for this. And I got something that was around 17 minutes. And then the schedules came out and it's 30 minutes and it's, oh no.
Yeah.
So obviously that meant I had to, obviously it meant I could go a lot more in detail on other topics or comparisons, which of course, without these, maybe make the whole talk in itself perhaps not as complete. But that was my experience with preparing the talk. It was sort of 2 weeks before, oh no, I need to get 15 more minutes worth of talk into this. Otherwise, yeah, we had some incredible people. Everyone or most people were fairly active. And this really helped to get some momentum going. People were able to practice beforehand, get the presentation jitters out of the system.
Thank you. And Zach?
Yeah, I mean, normally I procrastinate and leave it to the last minute, but actually I was fairly well prepared on this one. So I started early, which was good in theory, but actually I kept going back and changing it. And I think I guess there's kind of a balance of doing it really early and then you just filled with self-doubt and keep going and changing it all the time and doing it really late when you've not actually done anything. So on reflection, I might have actually started it a little bit later. I also found with the topic that I had as well, it was quite difficult to fill time because I was trying to give a brief overview of a lot of different topics that people wouldn't be too familiar with. So I didn't want to get too crunchy. But then on the other hand, you're trying to fill that time. So I kind of managed to get it 10 minutes and just kind of hope that we had those extra 5 minutes of questions. But it was an interesting experience. And I think I kind of just started off, like everyone else said, from like a bare bones kind of idea of I wanted to kind of take it through a story. Yeah, it was an interesting experience. Yeah.
Thank you. Right. And for all of you, pick your own order this time. Whoever puts their hand up first gets to answer first. Would you do it again? And if you were doing it again, would you do the same topic or what would your topic be for next time?
Yeah, definitely would do it again. I think, well, it depends obviously on the audience, but you would like, I think I would like to talk about something else, because then at the same time when you prepare, you can learn something. And I think coming off the feedback, it was really great. I mean, I was buzzing after the talk, and I think the one thing as well, which I would probably do next time, is maybe shorten my talk by a couple of minutes. So, because this time I didn't really have any time. I think I only had one question to answer, so let's leave a bit more time. So, if anyone has any questions or something like that. But yeah, overall, it was a great experience. I think it's a great learning curve, because eventually, I think, anyways, if you work in infosec, you need to be able to share your ideas, share your passions, and especially, working in any kind of environment you will be working. Everyone has diverse kind of skills, so you will be able to present to your colleagues what you're passionate about and share your ideas, your your knowledge and your skills.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep,
I would definitely
go,
do it again.
go.
Yeah. I think, if you ask me, can you present something like, next week, I'd be like, all right, well, it'll need to be the same topic again. It's like, this was my first time talking at any kind of infosec event. I'm my first time meeting people that work in infosec. Like, my background is networks and transport protocols originally. So I think if you came back to me in like a year or so, I'd be happy to present something different, once I've learned more. But yeah, I think we'd definitely do it again. Wouldn't change the topic, not for a while. I think mostly just because I feel like, I'd like to present something sort of like novel and in depth about like, okay, people might not know about this, here's what I think about it.
Yeah, I'll go next. I think what I will want to do is maybe kind of do a supplementary speech and maybe kind of flesh out how I see those kind of the war games or the scenarios playing out, just as kind of a companion to my original, just so I could go into a bit more depth and kind of lay out some draft ideas, really. Yeah.
I would definitely do it again. Possibly change the format a bit. Some wargaming or more theoretical stories on why things aren't compliant or why strategies might not be compliant. Again, the idea is really to, on the one hand, entertain, but also provide some, obviously, new knowledge or new tools to protect yourselves.
And we've actually had a question come in just for Zach, which I'm going to ask. Would you be prepared to run your next talk as a war game with the audience?
Wow, that is a question. Yeah, potentially. Yeah, I think I'd probably need some prep on that, but it would be an interesting way of doing things. I guess it would be run more like maybe a group training session and kind of break people off into smaller groups and see how they kind of deal with it separately and then come back to reflect. But yeah, no, that sounds like a cool idea.
We'll have a chat about something going on in early December.
Yeah.
Right. Moving on from that one. Okay. I put my foot in it last time and told the beer farmers they're doing a BeerCon3 or something equivalent, which will be Rise of the Rookies Part 2, however they want to name it. They've not disappeared me yet, so I assume that's going to happen. And if it doesn't, it's all on them. But what would your advice be to a rookie and newcomer going in for their first talk for the next one, starting with one?
I think something important is to have an idea of what you want to talk about and have an idea of how you want to explain it, and definitely show it to other people. We had the good fortune of having the mentors and the other rookies who were really involved, and this meant that we were able to get immediate feedback on this works or this is not clear, and that definitely made or helped me at least prepare to give the best talk I could.
And Zach?
Yeah, I mean, one covered it perfectly in terms of having that mentor support was like absolutely kind of critical, really, and it was amazing to kind of have that. So I think that was really good from kind of the BeerCon side of things, of having that support network of your mentors and the other panelists kind of in that Slack channel. I think being able to prepare is a big thing. I'd say make notes. I kind of laid mine out in a speech format, although I know some people kind of prefer to do bullet points. But I think a big thing is kind of finding out what speaking method works for you. So that might just mean running it in front of your, like, your partner or your cats or whatever, and seeing what feels most natural. It'd be particularly good to run it in front of a couple of other people. So if you think it might be better to kind of have people asking you questions throughout, or that might distract you a lot, so you'd prefer to have it at the end, I think it's really good ahead of time to run your speech past a couple of people. And again, that's where the mentors come in, but also like actually live people as well, or just over Zoom, and just seeing what works best for you.
Okay, and Viv?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just say, just get stuck in. Like, don't overthink it. If you have an idea and you think, okay, this might be interesting, submit it as a CFP. And then, if it gets accepted, they clearly see something in it. I think one of the main concerns I always had with submitting anything to an InfoSec kind of, gathering was there's kind of a reputation that these tend to be quite hostile circles sometimes. Like, that was always the thing that I got whenever I told people in networking circles, I want to present at an InfoSec conference. They always went, are you sure about that? It could be a bit harsh. But that was absolutely not the case whatsoever here. Like, everyone on the Slack channel was really friendly. They're more than willing to give support. We had the mentor sessions, and yeah, I think I would just say, yeah, don't be nervous. Just go and submit. If you think you've got anything even remotely interesting, yeah, go ahead.
I'm just going to point out, no one was nervous. It was all excitement. Marius?
I think the key thing is you have what I've learned over the last few months. The InfoSec community are very supportive. So I think sometimes as a person, you might be afraid to ask, but I think is the key point is don't be afraid to ask. And there are so many people that will help you, guide you, push you forward. As we've mentioned, use the Slack channel, use the build up your LinkedIn community. Ask anyone. There will be someone, whether to listen to your to your talk, or they'll provide feedback. I think the key point is, I didn't know as well before going, that you will have, when you're going to deliver your speech, you'll have people like Scott. There's someone you can look at, and when you present, where they just see that nodding face, kind of reassures you as well. You're not talking just to your screen, empty screen, which I think is really helpful as well. And just be mindful, lay it out your time. I think is, don't put too much text in the slides. Just think about the topics. Even if you get lost, if you have your kind of clear bullet points where you got in your head what you want to talk about, you'll be fine.
Thank you. Have I asked everyone?
Yeah.
Good. I thought there was a fifth person for a moment. Viv, there's a question specifically for you that I've had. Obviously, you've spoken in academia before, and you've spoken to a physical in front of you audience before. What were the differences?
So differences between InfoSec and academia, or just sort of like, this is my first time speaking remotely. Was it BeerCon?
Just differences.
Differences. There's loads. So the only speaking experience I've had beforehand. Oh no, wait, that's not true. I spoke at there was a sort of gathering of networking researchers that happens every summer normally in the UK, and that would be maybe about 70-ish people. And I spoke to them online about this research, and I think it was broadly similar. You're just speaking into a screen, so it was broadly similar from that perspective. But I think I felt under a lot more pressure to get like all of the technical details correct. Like, these are people that I've never seen before, and I really want to make a good impression at the BeerCon conference. And I think, yeah, it was a different talk. Like, I keep getting told off when I'm writing academic presentations about, okay, this is very, very technical. Can you talk to us about the ideas, the concepts, the impact, and all that sort of thing? And I sort of felt like this was kind of the reverse. And to be honest with you, I really enjoyed getting to talk about the technical details again. Loved it. So I think both different. I think, if I'm honest, I preferred BeerCon because it felt like something new, something different.
Thank you. Right. One thing that I've not fully announced yet, we will actually be doing a fifth one of these, which will be a group of the mentors, and we'll have a speaker as host. And I'm trying to help out whoever ends up hosting it, which will be a name drawn from a hat, So for all of you, what's the one question you would like to ask one of the mentors? Don't say which mentor, just one question you would like to ask. If we start with one.
The question would be, who was your mentor when you were starting, and how did that affect the way you were mentoring us?
Thank you. I'm just typing these out. Marius?
I would probably ask, how did you get into mentoring, and like what led you to be basically a mentor? I think that would be good to find out.
And Viv?
I think building on that, what led you to work in InfoSec? You know, when you went to university, did you start a degree that was relevant to it, or did you sort of come from a completely different background? Because I always find that really interesting, how it influences people's talks and mentoring.
And Zach?
That's a difficult one. I think I would ask, if you were, what would be your last speech if you were to completely disappear and you only had one more chance to speak publicly? What would your last speech be about?
Heavy.
That's not a sinister one at all. Okay.
That's deep. That's gone proper deep.
Right, now this one, there's a slightly different flavour for each of you, because I know some of you are in InfoSec, some of you are academia, some of you are security, and some of you are technical. But for those looking to move more fully into InfoSec, or just fully into InfoSec, or into industry, what is it that attracts you about it? For those who aren't in InfoSec, oh, actually, Zach, the beer farmers have just asked you to confirm that you don't know where they live.
Can't say anything at this time, sorry.
Okay. Anyway, for those looking to move into InfoSec or into cybersecurity or whatever you choose to call it, what's the reason you want to do that? For those who aren't looking to, is there something about it that appeals to you or puts you off actually moving into the industry or anything else? And let's go with, let's start with Zach this time.
I think InfoSec is not where I would end up as a job, but I think in terms of giving talks about it and in terms of researching it as well, it's just kind of a field that's kind of ripe with different approaches and different ideas. So like for me, the social engineering side of things is a huge kind of draw. So I really love kind of seeing like what makes people tick. And I guess that's the thing in terms of security, there's so many different aspects of it that I think it kind of draws a huge variety of different people, you know, whatever their kind of skill set or their specialization or their interests. It's kind of unique in that way. So yeah.
And we're going reverse alphabetical, so Viv.
So I think it's for the same reasons that I like research, and that a lot of challenges in InfoSec, it seems like solving some sort of like mad puzzle that doesn't necessarily make sense. It's like, you know, I'm starting to learn the basics of like malware analysis and reverse engineering at this point, and the textbook that I'm reading made the point about your programs will not, like the programs you analyze will not always make sense. You know, something really strange might have happened to you. There is not necessarily like a concrete explanation for it. And I really like that, where there's just no clean cut answer. It's like, okay, what's the best answer you can come up with for this? And I think, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what I want to do beyond the PhD, but definitely working in InfoSec, yeah, I'd be very happy there. More puzzles to solve.
And Marius?
Well, I've always been around. I worked for, I don't know, for a number of years around physical security. But since I was a kid, you know, I remember me and my neighbor, we used to, you know, take apart computers back when, you know, it was DOS, there was no Windows. We used to play around. We used to have, in my town, we had an old electronics like big building. We used to go there and steal like little plates where we solder on little different parts, and we used to play around. It's always been kind of exciting, and it's just, I've been loving kind of learning now. Especially, I've got so many books and so many courses that, you know, I keep learning every day and learning different things, and there's so many exciting stuff. I think especially I was talking with Greg. I just read his book, and I think he kind of left a bit of a profound kind of thinking in my head as well. Because every time now I've been doing quite a few interviews because I want to change my role, and everywhere is kind of just keep getting asked about different tools. What tools do you know? And I kind of the way Greg presents, it's not about learning about a specific tool. You can learn any tool within, I think, a couple of weeks. It's just about how you think and whether you can spot out anomalies. And it's all about actually hardening the systems ground up instead of patching or securing and looking at the various tools where you can fix what ways actually your infrastructure is not secure from the ground up. So there's a lot of things to learn. And just got a new actually book which I'm gonna go, because I want to go proper deep. I don't know if you guys know that one. That one's gonna go proper deep. So
if you keep this up, you'll be reading all of the what is it, 5, 6, 7 volumes of The Art of Programming next, and then Bill Gates will have to give you a job if you go by what he said in the 80s.
Yeah, so I'm going to read that, then I'm going to read Linux, and then I want to go a bit deeper in Python, because that's what next project.
One.
So we say that physical access is a part of information security, even though there's no digital element to, well, paper. So I'm going to say that compliance is definitely also in information security. And yes, definitely, I think it's an important part of the defenses in a company. Obviously, you get some compliance from security. Maybe you have a proper compliance strategy, you get limited risk. Definitely something that I want to continue doing.
Okay, and we've got a question coming in from LinkedIn, which is, what inspired each of you to talk about your topics? So you've spoken a bit about that, but why that particular topic? And that's not just why did you pick it, what is it about that topic that interests you? And let's start with Marius for this one.
Well, as I mentioned, I think at the moment, whoever I speak to, most of the companies are moving into the cloud, and I think it's numbers talking. By 2025, I think like 90% of the companies will be operating within the cloud. But I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the cloud and how I think one of the key aspects what I presented is you have to know. What are you responsible? What is your provider responsible? But what are, in terms of infrastructure, where you need to secure, if you, launching, like if you do an IaaS, you need to make sure you're patching your systems. You need to make sure you're secure, you're storing. And I think the profound thing was, as I mentioned before as well, Attack IQ, what they've been doing in terms of MITRE ATT&CK. I think as well, I encourage everyone, if you haven't been there, go. They have all their courses are free, so you can jump on, and do some courses about, if you're interested in learning about MITRE ATT&CK, about purple teaming, emulating attacks on your, on your kind of infrastructure, and how informed defense can help.
Thank you. And one.
So as I mentioned, obviously, for me, it came partly from experience. I had to sort of get some strategy from corporate, then figure out how that fit into what was actually going on site, and then develop our own strategy. And it was clear that compliance is not something that is meant for technical people, but in the end, it's the technical people who have to implement it. So I wanted to share some of the setbacks I'd seen. I did show some things which happened from the technical community, setbacks that affect, of course, information security. And then, of course, how our users also, well, all your users are made aware of where the risks are. I think that's really what made me want to pick this particular topic, going on, what are they trying to combat, what's been going on and how has it worked, or on the other hand, the negative consequences.
Thank you. And Zach?
Well, I think when James kind of suggested that I do a talk, I was kind of thinking, what would I do a talk on? And I think roleplay for me is one of my biggest hobbies, and I think out of all the hobbies I've got, it's probably the one with the most emotional connection. So that, it's important to me, and I think you should be able to speak on what you're important about. And I kind of relish any opportunity to kind of tell people about the hobbies I've got and the benefits they can have for them, and maybe get a few more people to enjoy them. And to be able to kind of tap that into a professional capacity was an interesting kind of experiment, really. So yeah.
Thank you. And Viv, I mean, it obviously interests you enough to spend 5, 6,
4
7 years
years.
studying. 4 years. 4 years studying it. So
So
actually, I'm really curious now. What
okay.
motivates you to spend 4 years studying IPv6?
So right, what I got initially was just a scholarship which said, okay, here's the funding, come up with some project. So the first 6 months of the PhD was literally just read widely, see if you can come up with a research question. So I didn't have any intention of studying IPv6 or anything like that specifically when I started. But what I was looking for was, okay, I'm interested in getting into security research, but I don't have any sort of background in it yet. My background is in networks and transport protocols. How can I try and find a bridge between the two of them? And I remember there was something in the back of my mind when I was reading about, like, oh, here's, a new Mirai strain, here's another paper about this. And all of them said, okay, there was an exhaustive scan of the IPv4 address space going on. And I thought, I remember people are talking about IPv6 and saying, like, it's a lot more difficult to scan that. So how are botnets going to, so people keep going on about if we switch to IPv6, we'll finally have an end-to-end connected internet. Like that's the big holy grail of networking research. And I sort of wondered, like, okay, but people are still going to try and come up with some sort of exploits, right? If we do move towards that. So how are botnets going to survive in an IPv6 internet? And that's what kickstarted this. Because I think there is also a fallacy, people just assume, oh, well, IPv6 addresses are massive, so you can't exhaustively scan that space. Okay, fine, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's more secure. So I think the end goal of this research, if we can convince people, please use secure addressing schemes, try and avoid this, try and do this, to stop devices being compromised just because people have effectively left the gate open on IPv6 security. Excellent. So I guess the answer is improving, just improving security for end users would be good. That's the aim.
Thank you. And we've got another question in Zoom. Just quickly, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, Periscope or LinkedIn, feel free to throw questions at the speakers. I will interrupt them and put the questions to them. But let's start with Viv on this one, because you are literally the embodiment of becoming an expert in your topic. Did you feel you needed to be or become an expert in the topic for your talk?
No, I am not an expert whatsoever. Like this is the first 6 months that I've spent studying this. Like this is just a very cursory, surface level look at it. So no, not in the slightest. This is just, here's what I've found out so far. And I was secretly I was kind of hoping if people could come up with corrections and say, actually, you can do this, or you've missed this or something, that's another shortcut. That saved me months of work that I would have spent in the study. So I'm secretly quite gutted that didn't happen.
You wanted someone to just weigh in and say, oh, but you've got that bit completely wrong. If you just do this.
Yeah. Because I remember someone did that in an academic talk and I was like, you say, I don't need to do local scans. That's fantastic. So yeah, long story short, no, not an expert whatsoever.
Did you feel you should have been?
Not really, no. I mean, it was like literally labeled the rise of the newbies, right? So it was like, okay, if you've got a cool idea, come and tell us what you know about it so far. So I didn't feel like under any pressure to be an expert, just, get your core details right and put something interesting forward.
It's been pointed out it was the rise of the rookies, not the newbies.
Oh, sorry, what did I say? Newbies.
Newbies.
Oops, yeah, rookies. Yeah. Apologies.
Marius.
No, I don't think you need to be an expert. And obviously my topic is you need probably more than 4 years of studying to be an expert. But I think it's just having enough knowledge that you can comfortably speak about what you know. And obviously if there are any questions arise, you can sort of share experience or share what you know within that kind of question. But no, I don't think you need to be an expert. I think you just need to build up some knowledge or or if you're talking about a specific subject that is your passion, I think you'll have enough knowledge to talk about it. So no, not necessarily.
Okay, and Zach?
I think now, looking back, the answer is no, you don't need to be an expert, and I don't think you need to become one. But having said that, when I started writing the presentation, I did kind of think, what if everyone just hasn't got a clue what I'm on about and kind of sees me as this terrible imposter that I am, because I'm not an InfoSec expert, I'm not a LARP expert, and I'm not a tabletop expert. So I guess kind of I was like, why am I even doing this? But I think like Marius said, my biggest concern was the question. So what if someone like asked me some sort of really technical question about any of those subjects, and I didn't know the answer? And that was always kind of a worry, but it was, it turned out to be unfounded. And I think that was a big part of kind of having the supportive kind of panelists, mentors, and the audience as well, to try and throw any curveballs at me. So yeah, I think I was initially worried, but I don't think you need to be an expert. I think as long as like others have said, you can talk comfortably, you should absolutely give it a shot.
One?
So still not a lawyer. So obviously not an expert, and not starting any law degree, so not planning on becoming one. I do think it's important to have an understanding of the topic, and the idea is to bring some added value to the people who are listening. It's not just, oh, this is what's written in the book, and go through the slides and you're finished. You want people who watched your talk to come out of it thinking, hey, I picked 1-2 points which they can then implement in their own strategies later on. I think that's definitely a win. Don't have to be an expert, just need to be able to, get that 1 or 2 points across, and you've won.
Well, this isn't the security speakeasy, although I might need to set one of those up. So I'm not going to talk about the expertise of lawyers in this area and experiences. So moving on to the next one. This is a follow-up or a comment around the question, but I can turn it into a question. Let's start with one this time. Do you feel there's something important about having a place for people to talk to things that interest them that's better than just having knowledge delivered from an authoritarian source on high?
I think there's a stage for everything. You might not go to something like BeerCon to hear about cutting edge techniques for securing your network environment. And you wouldn't expect to have someone to come and tell you horror stories about compliance at Black Hat. So I think there's definitely a stage for everything. And the stage definitely defines, what kind of audience is going to be there and what is the mindset. You go to a certain place as part of a business event, you go somewhere else because of personal interest. And definitely here, being able to provide insight and passion for a subject definitely comes through a lot more than in a more professional event, perhaps.
Okay. Viv?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, the question was, is there value in having people just discussing things that interest them?
Having a place for people to talk about things that interest them rather than delivering knowledge.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think different perspectives are, say for example, Zach's talk on D&D, I thought, oh, right, excellent, I love D&D, so how can we apply this to work? That's incredible. So I think, I don't want to say informal, but having sort of alternative perspectives, yeah, definitely very valuable. Love those.
And Marius?
Yeah, I think it's great to have, a platform to present what you're passionate about. And I think, if you want to be up to date in kind of InfoSec, you have to continue learning, and it's kind of never-ending circle. And as I speak to everyone, my knowledge at the moment is probably an inch deep and an ocean wide. But I think, attending these kind of topics, you can always figure it out if you are, you have other passions or various different topics, and then you listen to a specific speech, and you can kind of gauge and pick up interesting things, and then obviously you can follow up with your own research and learn more things. But it's just a great idea. You kind of present an overall kind of topic and what you can apply in your everyday life. So yeah, I think it's great.
And Zach?
Yeah, I think like everyone else has said, all those points, but I think that's probably why things like forums and comment sections have been so popular since kind of the dawn of the internet, really, is that, when I read a news article, I always scroll down and read the comments because I want to see what people think. Well, whether that's kind of for better or for worse, really. But I think kind of having these spaces to give speeches and it's a good opportunity for people to kind of take their ideas and maybe finesse them, and I think actually it gives you a chance to critically look over what you're thinking, because it's going to be presented to a kind of a public eye that has more of a direct face-to-face kind of thing, if you know what I mean, rather than just being a flippant internet comment. So I think it's good for personal reflection, but also, yeah, I think it's fun, and I think it gives people a skill that maybe they wouldn't get in their day-to-day lives.
Thank you. And I was going to say the next question will be the last one, unless we get any other interesting questions in, but we've had an interesting one in. So we can do this almost with a show of hands and then going to whoever wants to speak on it. Would anyone aspire to organise and run their own conference in the future? Show of hands, anyone?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, brilliant. In that case, starting with one, what would it be on? When are you going to do it?
Okay, what would it be on? I think the format that we had with BeerCon2 clearly showed that being open for new people to express what they're passionate about, what they're learning, clearly works. And it also meant that everyone is able to get something from lots of different domains. We had obviously SAC with D&D, with IPv6, completely different topics. 1 hour, you're able to learn about completely different things. I think that's definitely a good format. As for when, who knows?
Fair enough. Let's go, Zach, next.
I mean, I would love to kind of do maybe a virtual tabletop LARP kind of roleplay con where people can kind of come and speak about things that interest them from that field, whether that be people who've run games talking about their experiences or players. I think that would potentially be really interesting. I know there are kind of a couple of places, sort of LARP Con or the Board Games Expo, where that's kind of touched on, but I think a more kind of speech-based con like the BeerCon would be interesting to kind of see what talk people come up with.
Viv?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Juan and Zach have said about just getting people together to talk about, all sorts of different ideas and what interests them, because I thought that was something else I really enjoyed about BeerCon. Once I'd sort of calmed down enough to think, okay, you're speaking in a bit, that's fine, but just watch these talks in the meantime. Like, I learned about so much, so many different things. So I think, yeah, having even more people talking about different stuff, that would be excellent. As for when I'm a PhD student, whenever you've given me funding, I can't afford these.
I mean, I've got a Zoom subscription, so if you run it on Zoom, then I can provide the platform.
Maybe.
Marius?
Yeah, I think I would love to one day. I think, especially people these days, I think they're struggling to get into InfoSec. I think the field is so wide, and people sometimes they want to get, but they don't know where to start. So I would love to kind of share ideas, share my journey, talk about maybe kind of I know loads of people say obviously first it's experience, but sometimes if you don't have experience, obviously talk with people about certificate roadmap and what's kind of good. And obviously some people go certificates just to get the certificate, but you have to make sure you get the knowledge from them. As I mentioned, the Greg's book kind of left a profound kind of effect to talking about learning actual systems and how these systems work, instead of trying to master tools first. Just kind of general ideas and general kind of roadmaps into InfoSec and what to learn and kind of gauge people's passion, share knowledge, how to build networks. As I mentioned, InfoSec communities for me personally has been very supportive. Everyone's answered any questions, they gave guidance. Yeah, just kind of I think on that whole aspect of help supporting people, mentoring people on their journey into InfoSec, I think that would be a great kind of conference to do, or talk or presentation of things like that.
Brilliant. And we've got one last question I'm going to ask, unless any interesting ones come in, and then we'll take it to the private exclusive lock-in just for those in the luxury studio. So I'm going to turn one of the questions that you asked back on you, and let's start with one again. You've now had a taste of speaking. Let's assume you've had a career doing talks. What would be the one final speech you would like to be remembered for?
I think I would like to be remembered for covering privacy and compliance across the globe. I think that would be a good one.
Yep. Although you might not be known for it, you might be anonymous. There's an aspect of that there. Marius.
I think expanding on the last thing, I think I would like to be known as a person who maybe inspired maybe one or two people to go into InfoSec and kind of share my roadmap or my journey, and people that can pick up something that would apply in their journey and help them, inspire them, or to learn and jump into their journey or into InfoSec, and just help them and guide them in that way.
Thank you. And Viv?
So final speech, I think I'm going to dream big and say like one of those CVs that has like, mad like product branding and stuff, like a brand name and a logo and all that, part of a team that did that sort of thing. Yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool. But other than that, I've got no ambitions, just see where it takes me.
And
you mean
Zach?
IPv6 renamed to Viv6?
Oh, come on, that's just egotistical.
No, the first IPv6 protocol CVE. Discover some fundamental flaw in the protocol, get it a code name, get it a logo, website, the whole lot, press release, everything.
Yeah.
Zach?
I think I would want to give a speech that kind of wove my love of philosophy, roleplay, art, and politics. Maybe just some big manifesto. And because it's my last speech, I can just say whatever I want, because I'm never going to speak again. And I can just throw out all my outrageous opinions, and everyone's just going to have to deal with it.
So a TED Talk.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you for everyone watching on the live streams. We're going to say good night to you now. Everyone wave politely to people on the live streams. And those of you in Zoom, we will be private with you